Hey guys, it's Josh back at it again with another video for you guys. Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 things that I think are overhyped or just kind of oversold as these all-important camera features, regardless of whether or not they're actually important or not. We are going to be taking a trip down to Red Top Mountain, back where I've done 2 of my hiking videos. We're going to be doing a little bit of mixture of hiking and this top 5 list. So without further ado, let's get going.
So the first thing that I think is overhyped in the camera industry is burst rate. I do think that the camera industry has an overemphasis on burst rate of cameras. You know, you have cameras now with the Alpha 1 from Sony that shoots up to 30 frames a second. You're shooting video at 50 megapixels. That's cool. It's really, really cool, but how many people actually need it? I will make the argument that yes, Olympic shooters need it. Professional sports shooters, they could use it. But I've seen some beautiful sports images come out of cameras that could shoot 1 to 2 frames a second. If you just know what you're doing, you can kind of come around and overcome any obstacles that come into your way. We as landscape photographers don't really care about burst rate because we're not shooting images at 10 to 15 frames per second. I think the standard frame rate that you should see from most cameras for, general purpose use should not go higher, in my opinion, than 10, preferably like 7 or 8. Keep my costs down a little bit so I don't have to spend as much money on the camera, but make it accessible. If I do need to shoot sports, I can still get the shot. I can get the shot at 7 to 8 frames a second. I don't need 15 to 20 frames a second. Yeah, so that is number 1, is burst rate. And again, if you shoot sports, yes, burst rate is a great thing to have. For the rest of us, we don't really care about it. So the number 2 thing that I think is a wasted or overhyped spec is sensor resolution. I feel like high resolution cameras are not the end all be all for landscape photographers. It is nice to have that crop when we want it, but we don't necessarily need it all the time. And I do feel like it is a way for camera manufacturers to force the market price higher on some of their cameras. I mean, look no further than the A7R3 or A7R4, sorry, which is still $3,500 even though it's been out for over a year. You still have, or you have the Canon R5, which is $3,800, which, don't get me wrong, that is an amazing piece of technology and it's worth every penny, but we're talking $3,800. That's almost $4,000 for a 45 megapixel camera. And then you have the Nikon Z7 II, which is about a $3,000 camera. You have the Panasonic S1H, which is rough, or S1R, sorry, not the S1H. The H is their insanely good video camera. The S1R is their high resolution. It's a 46, 47 megapixel, and it's roughly around 3,000 to 3,500, depending on if you can catch it on a sale or not. That's just ridiculously expensive for what you need. I'm not entirely sure we, as landscape photographers, need that resolution. It is nice to have it, and I know in previous videos I said, oh, we want high res, but now that I've kind of used lower res cameras again, I'm kind of back to that determination that we don't actually need high resolution cameras. We can get away with shrinking our kits, shrinking our budgets, going to a package that would allow us to save that money for what really matters, which is the trips, going out and taking those landscape photographs. Because, when you're working with a limited budget like me, who works retail, you don't have the money to go blow to Greece or to Spain 3 times a year. That money doesn't exist. And so I have to budget what I'm doing. And I think one of the ways that I can do that is by shrinking my camera kit, going to not 2.8 lenses, but f4 lenses, and going to a lower resolution camera. I will still get absolutely fantastic images out of it, but it's just not going to allow me to crop 300%. But if you craft a crop 300%, you probably didn't get a good image. Like, it's just the truth. You probably are introducing a lot of haze into your image. You're probably losing every characteristic that makes that image good. It's better to get it right in camera than it is to say, oh, I'll fix it in post, or I'll crop it and it'll look good. I'd rather make it look good in person. So that's my number 2, sensor resolution. I just don't think it's 100% necessary for landscape photographers. On to the next one. All right, guys, so we're on to number 3. So number 3 in my list of overhyped camera specs is autofocus points. So autofocus points are, the points in which the camera can actually focus on. It is good to have a lot, but from my experience, anything really over like 300 autofocus points is negligible. It's kind of that law of diminishing return where the higher you go, it's kind of almost like an exponential curve where you just start leveling off and you're not really getting any extra benefit with the extra autofocus points. Sony was the first to kind of pioneer the idea of just throwing an insane number of autofocus points with like the A6000 back in the day. And that A6000 had, I think, 179 autofocus points. And before that, I mean, their highest count on a DSLR was like 50. So, you're more than tripling your amount of autofocus points there. It was okay. Yeah, the A6000's autofocus was never something to write home about. It was never going to give you award-winning autofocus, but it did start a trend where camera manufacturers started figuring out ways to put as many autofocus points into a camera as they possibly could. Sony then came out with their A7 III, which had like 693 autofocus points. And it's a cool spec to throw out there when you're selling a camera, but it's not 100% beneficial. I think I would rather have a more accurate autofocus system with less points, maybe around the 300 to 400 range, that are, the processor doesn't have to work as hard to get the autofocus to work better. Now with face and eye tracking autofocus systems that you have in cameras nowadays, it is good to have a lot of autofocus points, like I said, 300 to 400 autofocus points, so that the camera does have something to actually focus on, and it has a point small enough that it can move that point around very quickly. But I think 600, 700, or like the new Canon R5 that has like some 6,000 autofocus points. It's ridiculous. It's a number that they can throw on a spec sheet. It doesn't actually help you at all. And in fact, with the Canon, if I remember correctly, you don't even use all 5,000 autofocus points in the same mode. Like, you can't use them all in the same mode. You have to kind of pick and choose what you're going to be using. So that's my number 3 is autofocus. So while we are sitting here taking a break and I'm talking to you guys, I'm sitting on this really nice bench that was provided by, I think, a Boy Scout troop. Drink your water. Bring water with you when you're on long hikes. Drink it. Make sure you're staying hydrated, especially in the summer here in Georgia. It is very hot. It is very humid. I think we're running like some 91 degrees today is the high with like an 85% humidity. Basically, you walk outside, it is a swamp. Florida's got nothing on Georgia this summer. It is insane how hot it is right now. Anyways, with that, I highly recommend getting a water bottle that is going to be a long-term water bottle, something that's, hard plastic. Like, I like these Nalgene bottles that I got this one from REI. It's sustainable. I really like the design on it. It's got this like hippie kind of thing, because I like to pretend I'm a hippie that got a job. With that said, make sure we do what we can to end single-use plastics. Any small thing that we can do to lower the amount of plastic that's in a landfill that will outlast our own bodies, it's a good thing, because the plastic problem will only get worse. And any small thing like ending single-use water bottles that we can do to help goes a long, long way towards sustainability. So that's my one environmental pitch for the year. All right, so the fourth and almost the final thing that I wanted to talk about with overhyped camera specs is sensor size. So we talked about sensor resolution and how I feel like it's a little bit of overhyping and inflating the camera price points. I do think sensor size also plays a hand in that. I think that a lot of newer photographers are told that if they don't buy a full frame camera, they don't have a good camera, and that's just simply not true. Look at the Fuji cameras for no further proof. You have some absolutely stellar image quality out of the X-T4, the X-T30, the X Pro S, the X1H. You have some of the coolest and most unique cameras I've ever seen in my life, and they are APS-C crop sensor cameras. You don't have to have a full frame camera to get a fantastic image. It will give you shallower depth of fields. It will give you better low light capability than a crop sensor, but it's not 100% necessary to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on a full frame camera and then buy a crap lens. I personally am of the belief that glass matters more than camera. Therefore, it is better to invest in a $1,000 lens than it is to invest in a $1,000 camera when a, say, $500 camera will take a good picture as long as you know how technique works and how to get that proper technique and how to learn how to take images. Once you learn that technique, you can make a good image out of a shit camera. All right, so the fifth and final thing that I have found to be the most overhyped specs in all of landscape photography is 4K or 8K video resolution. It's not that 4K or 8K is bad, it's just not necessary to make good video. And camera manufacturers love to slap on as many Ks as they possibly can get to get you to buy their camera, because obviously if the camera has more Ks, it's got to be better. I mean, at that point, we might as well say the camera has more diffracticons and it's going to be better. Those who know, they know. But I'm not saying it's entirely useless, but it is overhyped to the point where it doesn't matter as much. I film all of my videos in 1080p at 60 frames per second because I know where my audience is mostly watching my channel, which is on YouTube, of course, because this is a YouTube channel, which means either they're watching it on their phone, they're watching it on their computer, maybe if I'm lucky, they're watching it on TV. But right now the data says otherwise, that they are not watching it on their TVs, they are watching it on their phones and their computers, which means most of those screens are not 4K. They are 1080. And what that means is I don't have to shoot in 4K to be able to cater to my audience. So, why even shoot 4K? Why care about 4K? Well, that's why my main video camera is an EOS R. I think the 1080 looks absolutely fantastic out of it. The 4K is whatever because it crops the 4K, but I'm not using it. I don't care about it. My audience clearly doesn't care about 4K. Would it be nice to be able to do it? Yes. I also don't have a computer that can handle 4K files, which means I'd have to invest another $1,500 to $1,600 into a camera that could, or into a computer that could handle 4K. And I don't have that kind of money, so I'm not shooting it. Now, if you are a filmmaker or if you are a video-centric YouTube channel like, say, Gerald Undone or Unbox Therapy, you probably are going to want 4K. And in that case, like a camera like the Sony a7S III or the Canon R5 are gonna be the cameras for you. But if you're just starting out a YouTube channel, or if you are just doing some basic video, there is absolutely nothing wrong with HD video, with 1080p HD video. It's Blu-ray, for goodness sakes. We've loved the look and feel of Blu-rays for, what, over a decade now, and we've never complained about that. But all of a sudden, now that there are 4K cameras and there are 8K cameras, 1080 is no longer, it's worthless, it's useless, we need to throw it away. No camera that shoots 1080 is worth anything. I don't buy that. I think that you can save money and again, use that money for either lenses, trips, a computer that can edit 1080. You can save your money by not worrying about how many Ks a camera has, its video resolution. It's not entirely useful. And I just think it's overhyped. And I say that as a camera salesman where, yeah, I push how many Ks there are to sell a nicer camera because that's my job. But I'm telling you guys as a consumer advocate, you don't have to. You really, really don't have to. If you aren't, if you know for a fact you don't need 4K, don't buy a camera that specializes in 4K. Anyways, that's the end of today's video. Unfortunately, I really didn't see any cool photographs here. It's almost noon. It is high sun. As you can see from the background behind me, it's getting to that point where the highlights are going to be way too bright, the shadows are going to be way too dark, and everything's going to be way too contrasty. I'm not going to be able to pull any images out of it. So unfortunately, no photos on today's trip, but I did think this was a nicer location than my backyard to film for today's video, or this week's video. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, do all of that fun YouTube-y stuff. And until the next video, guys, peace. Oh, one more thing I forgot to tell you guys. I have decided I am getting an R6. I am in the process of selling all of my gear to KEH. They are not a sponsor of today's video, but KEH, if you want to, let me know. We can work something out, guys. Anyway, so my stuff is getting sent off to KEH, and I will soon have the money to buy a EOS R6. I've already, of course, because I have an R, I already have the 50mm 1.8 RF, which is what I'm filming on right here. It's how I'm able to get a very shallow depth of field. I already have the 24-105 RF, and I will be purchasing as well the 16-35 EF version 2, so the new one, the one that came out like 2018-ish, I think. And I have an adapter already that I will be adapting that lens over to. It'll probably be the only EF lens I buy. I thought about the 14-35 RF, but I'm not paying $1,700 for that. That's Canon, what are you doing? I mean, the Nikon 14-35Z is $1,200, $1,300. You're charging $1,700. If it was a relatively well-priced lens, I would be buying the RF version. It's not a relatively well-priced lens, so I'm not buying it. I'm gonna buy the EF version and adapt it over. Anyways, guys, for real this time, comment, like, subscribe. I will be doing a unboxing video and a quick review, like a almost a preview of the R6 when I finally do get the money to actually buy it. But yeah, anyways, guys, till next time, for real this time.